video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different to what's been on my channel so far, and it's just an idea that I had to kind of draw more on my my professional / work life. So the plan for today is to take you along with me to my office and just let you follow me for a day in Parliament, which is where I work. And a bit later on in the video, I'll share a bit more about my journey and some of the words of wisdom that I wish that I had when I was going through, finding my career and my professional life. And a massive disclaimer right at the beginning of the video is that obviously what has worked for me in my life and how my journey has gone is absolutely not going to apply to everyone. So I thought it was important that I share that. So yeah, let's have a good day together. So I've just come from a meeting in the central part of Parliament, and I'm just heading back over now to where I'm working. So it's about 5, 6, 7 minute walk back over. So yeah. So as promised, I did say that I was going to take some time out of my day to just talk a bit about my own professional journey, what I do now, and kind of some words of wisdom that I would give to a younger version of me. I was always quite academically strong from quite a young age, and in school I think maybe some of the natural abilities that I displayed from family and from friends, people just and teachers as well suggested that law could be a good path for me to follow. So to be honest with you, I kind of like the sound of it. So that was kind of the path that I set myself on from quite a young age. in school, my interest when it came to like my GCSEs were really quite broad. So I'd say it wasn't until we had to pick subjects for A-levels that I kind of had to start narrowing down, okay, what am I particularly interested in? So for my A-levels, I took economics, English literature, sociology, and history. Oh gosh, you saw my mind go blank. That just goes to show how long ago it was that I did my A-levels. And then I went off to study law and sociology at Warwick University. Now, the reason I decided to choose a joint degree was because by the time I was doing my A-levels, I had done more research into law, what it was like to study law, and I had begun to understand that straight law as a BA degree was quite intense, and it didn't necessarily capture everything that I was interested in. So I decided to do a joint degree in sociology, and that meant that my BA was 4 years instead of 3 years if I had done straight law. When I was in the third year of my law and sociology degree, I studied a module called international law. And I suppose by this time I had already become a bit more, I don't know what the word is. I'd started to ask more questions, I suppose, internally as to whether qualifying as a lawyer and going to law school and doing the training contract thing, I'd started to already ask questions as to whether that was for me. But then when I took the international law module, that kind of sealed the deal for me. That international law module opened up my mind and my imagination to a very different realm of law, I suppose, which was a lot more, I don't know the right word, it was a lot more political. It seemed a lot more relevant to me and the woman that I was becoming, because some of the traditional law modules that you have to study as a law student can be quite dry and quite heavy. So I eventually made the decision that I had already got a place at law school. I eventually made the decision to not go to law school and not follow the commercial lawyer route, training contract route. So I took some time after I graduated to do a lot more research into the different kinds of law and the different avenues that could be open to a graduate like me, a graduate of law and sociology. And by this time, I had become a lot more, I suppose passionate is the word, a lot more passionate about my world, about advocacy, about social justice, I suppose. I had just become a lot more passionate about different things that I felt just wouldn't be able to be captured if I went down the qualifying route. Now that I look back, I would say that that's not necessarily true, because I have friends who went down the law school qualifying route and they've actually branched out into some really interesting things. But for me at the time, it just wasn't for me. So I did a lot more research and I realized that, okay, if I eventually want to get into a field that's closer aligned to my passions and my interests, I'm going to have to do a master's degree. So I was very, very adamant that I wanted to do my master's in London, just because I'd spent 4 years out of London doing my first degree. But I went back to look at the master's degrees at my former university, and I was blown away by the syllabus of the International Development Law and Human Rights Masters at Warwick University. And as far as I was concerned, the syllabus it blew everything else out of the water that I was looking at, even from other top universities in London. So I applied for the Masters, the LLM, and embarked on my journey. And it was incredible. My Masters was incredible. And I always tell people that my Masters experience just could not compare in any way to my undergraduate experience. It was just so different, the way that you learn, the way that you're taught, the freedom that you're given, the modules that you study. It was just a different experience. So after my Masters, I had been exposed to, the name of the Master says it all, International Development Law and Human Rights. So I've been exposed to potential avenues of work that could be open for a graduate like me. And I decided to jump into the NGO sector, specifically focusing on women's rights issues. So I worked I did an internship initially at a legal advocacy organization who specialize in women's human rights violations. So after I completed that internship, I got a full-time position at another women's organization, but that work focused specifically on female genital mutilation, raising awareness and advocacy around that. And then from there, I did some. There's like a period in time where I did some other things, which is related to kind of my more creative side. But that's for another video. And then I went back into the NGO sector and worked with an anti-human trafficking organization. And then after that, I actually started to do more research as to, okay, where can I go from this? I've got some really good experiences in the NGO/legal advocacy world. So where can I go? And it was actually a friend of mine who suggested that I look at jobs within Parliament. Now, working in the Houses of Parliament had never even crossed my mind. It had never been something that was even on my radar at any point in my education or in my my higher education or throughout my work life. So it did take me by surprise. But when I did look into working in Parliament, to be honest with you, I was shocked by how much is available. Like there are hundreds of different types of jobs in Parliament. So I applied for a post back in 2018, and maybe I'll talk about it on another video because I'm conscious that I've talked for quite a bit. But I got a position within Parliament related to working with the Commonwealth, and then recently I've got an additional position, still parliamentary facing, but focusing on policy work and parliamentary work around the sickle cell condition. So that's kind of like my academics and my professional life and my career. And looking back now, there's two major things that I wanted to share in this video. And the first thing is that, as you'll learn on my channel, whilst I was a very academic child, I was also highly creative as well. And going through the education system, there were other cultural pressures which meant that I really, really, really struggled in school, in uni, and for the most part of my professional life as well. I struggled to believe or accept that having these creative passions were just as valid and just as okay and just as important as my academic or professional pursuits. And I think that stems from I suppose, how the education system is structured on top of culture to make you believe that you have to choose one serious thing and pursue that. So internally, I really struggled to be at peace with believing that the creative side of me was just as important. So looking back now, I would say that, and I'll link an article that I've written about this called Ambidextrous Millennials. But my advice to those, in the younger generations would be to really stand strong in what you're passionate about and what you want to do with your life, whether that's traditionally academic or creative or both. Obviously, later in life, I was able to pursue my creative passions in fashion and photography and poetry and writing, but it was a lot later in my journey that I actually found the courage to pursue those things. And the second thing that I would say as to anyone in the younger generations who, you're just starting out on your professional life journey, you can hear from my own story that I did quite a few things, and I would say to not be scared to do different things, because sometimes it's in doing those things that you can really hone down on what you like to do and what you want to pursue. Follow what you are intuitively drawn to, but do different things within that sector or within that field, or in other fields, to just kind of learn what works for you and what feels right. So those would be my top 2 takeaways for anyone who's kind of starting out their journey of profession and career. My time in Parliament has allowed me to meet some amazing MPs from the UK and throughout the Commonwealth. I've had experiences which I will tell my children about, and travelled to places that I may have never visited otherwise. My professional journey has by no means been linear, and there were some really dark and low times. But I hope my story can encourage someone, even if it's just someone. So that's me all done with work for today. Thank you for joining me for a day in Parliament. I hope hearing a bit about my work journey has been useful. I usually leave commuting back home till after the main rush hour, which is sometimes from about 4:30 to about 6. So hopefully the trains going back home will be a bit quieter. And yeah, thank you again for watching another video, and I will see you soon.